Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch, and welcome today to my annual roundup, my top 5 bottom 5. 5 watches or watch related things that I enjoyed over the course of the last 12 months, and 5 watches or watch related things that I didn't enjoy nearly as much over the course of the last 12 months. And was it just me, or was 2024 not the strongest year for new releases at the affordable end of the market? There was no big hype watch, there was no Casio or PRX or even a Timex Q that people were clamouring for and paying over the odds for. And we didn't even get a new plastic, fantastic, affordable version of a luxury watch from the Swatch Group in 2024. For goodness sakes, what happened there? They're clearly slipping. I don't know, maybe I also didn't dig around hard enough this year. I know I missed at least one big release, more on that later. Anyway, not only is it my annual roundup, but it is my annual opportunity to thank all of you lot for another year watching a Scozzy in a t-shirt in a garden shed talking about affordable watches. The channel is now fast approaching 100 million total views, which totally blows my tiny mind, considering the whole thing started off as a bet with my wife that I would get 2,000 views before Christmas 2016. I didn't quite hit that target, by the way, but I've done all right since then, I think, and it's all thanks to you, so thank you. Now, as usual, I'm going to start with my top 5 in the first half of the video before unleashing Dark Jody in the second half of the video. Let's get on with it. And let's start by giving some love, some credit where it's due to the big affordable brand that I thought had the strongest 2024, Citizen. I think Citizen had another really solid year this year, and I think 2024 was the year that, if not quite roles were reversed, then certainly people started taking more interest in Citizen and less interest in Seiko. The Tsuyosa was huge for Citizen in 2023, and they backed that up in 2024 by releasing a small second version, an absolute stunner of a watch with the right set of specifications, including sapphire crystal. Seiko, I'm talking to you, all at a very affordable price. I also reviewed their Forza chronograph, which was a cracker, but I rather missed their titanium 3-hand small second version of the Forza that everybody raved about. And I also missed their newly launched JV1006 that appears to be excellent. Those two are definitely on my hit list for review in 2025. Now, I freely admit that 3 of the watches on screen all have integrated bracelets. They're all somewhat similar therefore, but they're similar in that they're well made, they're great value, and they're backed by a 5-year warranty, one of the best warranties at the affordable end of the market. No wonder Citizen are increasingly eating Seiko's lunch. At number 2, please permit me just a little bit of self-promotion here. I put the launch of Erebus and the Erebus Origin at number 2 on the list last year because that was such a huge moment for me personally, launching my own brand. And I'm going to put the launch of the Erebus Ascent at number 2 this year as well. Stephen and I, we wanted to make a watch with as many of the best elements of Grand Seiko, Aquaterra, Chronomaster, Datejust, Oyster Perpetual, etc, etc. All of the classic luxury Gada sports watches as possible, but for as little money as possible. And I think we did all right. These were from $349 on pre-order, and I honestly don't think there's another micro brand that offers more watch for less money than we do with this one. Lots and lots of plans for 2025 as well. But Erebus were not the only Aussie brand to make a splash in 2024, and at number 3, I want to big up the whole Australian micro scene, which has come on leaps and bounds over the last couple of years. Stephen and I attended a couple of different watch fairs this year, one in Melbourne, one in Sydney, which was great to see for a start, and we proudly joined the likes of Grip Auto Timepieces, Bozell, the Melbourne Watch Company, Galvin Watch Company, and newcomers this year, Ocean to Orbit and Hertz watches. Now, it's obviously a rather limited market down here with a relatively small population of well under 30 million, so under half of the population of the UK and about 8% of the population of the USA. Plus we have the tyranny of distance and a plethora of taxes, making it quite hard to do business down here, and yet the local scene is thriving. And it is thriving at least in part because of really strong support from local collectors, i.e. you lot watching in Australia. So once again, thank you, specifically you. And at numbers 4 and 5, I want to call out a couple of watches, a couple of specific models that I reviewed this year that I thought were getting right up there amongst the best of breed. The first is by Christopher Ward. Now, with the Bel Canto and the 12X and so on, Christopher Ward are increasingly pushing beyond the affordable space where they began. But they did release a chronograph early this year for well under $1,000 that ticks so many boxes if you're in the market for that style of watch. It's called the C63 Valor. It features their signature light catcher case, which is excellent. It comes with a choice of 2 different bracelets or a rubber strap, and it features an ETA high accuracy quartz chronograph movement. For sure, you can just about scrape into a mechanical chrono for $1,000 by the Swiss, but quartz chronos make more sense at this price, I think, especially one that is accurate to plus or minus 10 seconds per year. Real kind of set and forget champion, this one then. I thought perhaps the case was a mil smaller than it ideally should have been, but apart from that, it's an excellent all-rounder from the world's undisputed #1 Swiss-made, British-based legacy micro brand. And finally, at number 5, let's give 2 of my favourite micro watches of the year a little bit of love here. I finally got my hands on a Brew this year and I was not disappointed. Quirky, colourful, fun, interesting, unusual, in many ways a lot of exactly what is good about the micro scene distilled into 36mm of chronograph, all for well under $500 US. I think if you were trying to explain the concept of a micro brand watch to somebody and you showed them this Brew, they would get it. And another watch I thought was just gorgeous, the beautiful Vario Empire GMT. Beautifully designed, nicely put together and fairly priced. It's the brand standout model and it offers a look that you simply don't get from any of the big brands, whether they be Swiss or Japanese, at this price. Alright, moving on to the negative half of the video, let's just turn the lights down a little bit for this one, my bottom 5 for 2024. And if Citizen were #1 on the top half, you know what's coming, don't you? Seiko, #1 on the bottom half. Cue the vitriol in the comment section. I'm sorry, Seiko-holics, I gotta put them there. I just don't think they had a good year at all. There were a couple of highlights, some pretty presages and the excellent 1968 reissue, a reissue done right. But apart from that, Seiko's 2024 seemed to be a bit of a dud. Just a churn of mashups like that messy Shogurai, a sea of underwhelming limited editions, and a continuation of what we've been seeing from them for the last 3 or 4 years now, which is the reissuing of older models with minimal changes at higher price points. I think the most egregious example of this was the release of the SRPK99. Now, clearly this was a reissue of the beloved SNZH series, arranged known as the 55 Fathoms, because it looked a lot like a Blancpain. But all Seiko did here was take the dial and hands of the original watch, which were, and still are, very pretty, and stick it into the 5KX case, hence the crown at 4 o'clock. So it kind of looked like the original, but it had a totally different case and bracelet. As such, it totally lost the soul of the original watch, all while costing twice the price of the original watch. I felt it was just so lazy of them and pretty cynical, a literal half-arsed attempt. Next up on the hit list, and I'm sorry but not sorry here, it's the Timex Enigma. Now, if you haven't seen this one, it's a reissue of a watch from the mid-1970s by Timex, a fairly faithful reissue at that, and its USP, now as then, is those so-called floating hands. Timex put a dark dot under the centre of the crystal and then blanked out the hands to make them appear, kind of, as if they were floating mysteriously above the dial, hence Enigma. Now, Timex have made some cracking reissues in recent years, and the head of the watch is certainly pretty, but the bracelet is little short of a disgrace. Bracelets like this one with cheap rolled links simply do not belong on watches in 2024. They did not belong on watches in the 1970s, but hey, it was a different time back then, so what can you do? It's just so disappointing when you buy a watch and you basically have to junk the bracelet because the bracelet's junk. Perhaps if you have literally 0 arm hairs, you can get away with it, But again, I shouldn't be talking about getting away with something, should I? Timex really pushed the envelope with the pricing on these retro reissues. The least they could do therefore is make the bracelets wearable. And in the disappointing absence this year of a new Plastic Fantastic pseudo reissue by the Swatch Group, we had a Plastic Fantastic pseudo reissue by LVMH instead, the Kith Heuer, or as Russell, the Mad Watch collector, hilariously referred to it, the Kith Heuer. An inexplicable collaboration with a brand that make overpriced t-shirts that, oddly enough, I'd never heard of. They were asking $1,500 for a quartz watch made mostly of plastic. No wonder Max kept his helmet on to hide his shame while promoting it. It seems somebody at LVMH thought anything the Swatch Group can do, we can do worse. And do you know what? I think they succeeded. Now, I love traditional analog watches, and I know that you love traditional analog watches as well. That's why we're all here. But sometimes manufacturers try to cram more and more and more and more utility into a traditional analog watch to the point that it becomes fucking impossible to operate. And so it was with the Citizen, the CB5036 that I bought then reviewed earlier this year. It came with an 89-page instruction manual. It's a watch, for goodness sake. Who is going to read an 89-page instruction manual for a watch? I then spent an entire 15-minute video proving how ridiculous it was by demonstrating just how long it took to perform simple tasks like setting an alarm or changing the time. My conclusion was, and still is, if you want a watch with alarms, countdown timers, stopwatches, etc., just buy a digital watch. The analog dial format has its limits, and that Citizen clearly was in breach of those limits. And finally, at number 5, I can always rely on AliExpress for a good few roastings over the course of any calendar year, and 2024 was no different. Now, I have no objection to copycats, lookalikes, homages, clawmages, whatever you want to call them. AliExpress watches that mimic the look and feel of a much more expensive luxury watch for a fraction of the price, as long as they're not pretending to be something they aren't. Enter this Seastern Nomos lookalike that had the audacity, the temerity, the impertinence, the impudence, and the insolence to leave the factory with the word original printed on the dial. Needless to say, I gave the watch a proper roasting. The brand must have spotted the video because they changed the printing on the dial shortly thereafter, and a couple of weeks later they sent me a message on Instagram saying that I had misquoted the loom that we used on our Erebus Ascents, so there. What goes around does indeed come around. So there you have it, that's my top 5, bottom 5 of what I still maintain was a bit of a lackluster year at the affordable end of the market. There were no breakout micros and no big brand watches that everybody simply had to have. Here's hoping for a new viral affordable in 2025. But what were your top picks this year? What were your biggest hits and also your biggest misses? Leave me a comment, let me know. And once again, thank you for your support this year. Thank you for watching, thank you for commenting, thank you for liking, thank you for disliking, for generally being part of the JOMA community. Long may it continue. If you want to see what made the list last year or the year before, click here or here. Thanks for making it to the end of the video. I'll see you again in the next one.